What is up, guys? Welcome to my breakdown for the official trailer for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So what we're going to do, obviously, in this video is go through the trailer, break down everything it has to show us, covering plot details, but also at the end of this video, we have some new bonus details from Entertainment Weekly, who had an interview with the director James Wann, in where he talked on Batman, James Gunn weighing in on Aquaman 2, claims about Amber Heard's involvement, a potential third movie, and more. So stick around for that if you want to. It should be timestamped if you want to maybe skip around yourself. But other than that, if you go on to enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate a like. Maybe consider sharing it out there on social media to help me out. But without further ado, let's get into what exactly Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom has to show us. So at the very beginning of the trailer, we have Arthur Curry do a recap of what's happened since the first Aquaman movie, from 4 years ago when he was unemployed, a wanderer with no home, but now he's a husband and a father. Now we do see him spending time having a family barbecue at his father's lighthouse, and I believe we can even see not only Atlanna there, but also Mera with the baby. Now, clearly with a lot of the shots at the front of this trailer with him talking about being a husband and a father, you would have thought maybe there would have been a shot of husband mode kind of thing, but they seem to maybe stray away from, really showing Amber Heard head on in the trailer. There is a shot that we'll get into, and we will cover some more of those details at the end with James Wann talking a little bit about how apparently Amber Heard's role has been pared down compared to what it was. He actually denies it. But either way, Aquaman seems to be struggling balancing both his duties as king of Atlantis and as a new father. And he speaks to his dad about how he doesn't know how he did it with him, but as he says, his job was a little less stressful than Arthur's. And you could say that as we see this ship just bursting through, or some kind of vehicle bursting through to Atlantis, and we have Arthur rush towards it and manage to slow it down to avoid more destruction. By the way, I love how all of this commentary is happening while we see him just, waking up, and we see casually his Aquaman suit just hanging on the clothing line. Now, as for that ship at the very beginning, or that vehicle, it could just be something that went awry in Atlantis and is crashing down, and perhaps is somewhat of an everyday in the life of thing that Arthur might have to deal with when protecting the city. But I do wonder if it could be a part of the much larger plot that we're about to break down, with it having to do with a much larger set of ships and vehicles that we could see, such as when we see Patrick Wilson's Orm get grabbed by the Octobot, which comes from the Lost Kingdom, which is the seventh underwater principality that formed from the sunken remains of Atlantis. Now, James Wann described this about the Lost Kingdom when it comes to Aquaman 2. One of the funniest things for me about this movie is designing the Lost Kingdom. We see what the Lost Kingdom is, we see this society, and within it we see the vehicles and the toys and the weapons and all that. The Octobot is one of their traveling vehicles that move in and out of the water. Everything about the Lost Kingdom came from my love for the Silver Age Aquaman comic book, which is the 1960s comic book. So everything about it has a very retro feel. Now, as the trailer unfolds, we hear Aquaman say that 500 million people from every known species in the sea call this place home, but that doesn't mean they all like him, which is to be expected and is probably a part of the overarching story for Aquaman in this movie, because as he's a new king, he's still not won over the people of Atlantis or even other kingdoms. But when the trailer cuts immediately to Black Manta, of which the synopsis describes him as having failed to defeat Aquaman the first time, Black Manta, still driven by the need to avenge his father's death, will stop at nothing to take Aquaman down once and for all. This time, Black Manta is more formidable than ever before, wielding the power of the mythic Black Trident, which unleashes an ancient and malevolent force. So perhaps with Black Manta's threat to Atlantis and probably the world, with what we're about to get into with the Black Trident, by the end of the movie you can maybe vibe out here that Aquaman's trial and tribulations to defend the world and Atlantis will have him be recognized as a loved king to his people. And as we hear Black Manta say, "I'm gonna kill Aquaman and destroy everything he holds dear," we see him get into something that looks similar to an Autobot. So I wonder if scenes like this could be him going to locate the Black Trident, or there's another scene in the trailer where we see him in his ship and he seems to be exploring. So it's very likely he's on the hunt to find the Lost Kingdom itself. And he continues to say, "I'm gonna murder his family and burn his kingdom to ash." And so we see scenes in this moment of where Atlanna looks like she's being pursued. And we know that Black Manta has acquired some followers, and he's not doing this alone. So Atlanna could be escaping for her life here while being pursued by Black Manta and his forces. Not to mention what we covered in the first teaser trailer breakdown that we did, in where we can see Arthur looking horrified as he rushes towards his father's lighthouse completely set ablaze. Now, in this official trailer, we do get somewhat of what I believe is another angle of his father's lighthouse crumbling in flames, as we can see Black Manta here celebrating as the lighthouse goes down, also with some creatures under his command, likely due to the Black Trident's magic, which we'll get into in just a minute. So I do think it's quite likely that one of Arthur's parents will die in the movie, but let me know if you think it's going to be both of them. I don't think it will, but you never know. And Black Manta really means business, because at this moment we see him charge up and unleash his manta rays, destroying various vehicles and also causing major damage to the bridge to Atlantis. And we see Black Manta sat here equipping the Black Trident, which, really glows green. I guess it's black without the glow, but most people are now calling it the Green Trident from what I'm seeing. But it actually seems to also imbue Black Manta himself, as you can also see that his eyes are glowing green. We can see in various shots of the trailer that his actual Black Manta suit is radiating this green energy. And also notice how he seems to be sat on a bit of a throne here. So I wonder if at the point of this shot that we're seeing on screen right now, if maybe he's discovered the Lost Kingdom, and this could be where he's getting a lot of the resources that he needs, such as the Octobot and the other vehicles that we see in the trailer, to rally against Atlantis. Either way, it looks like there will be an initial threat that Black Manta gives away as a bit of a warning to Aquaman. Not to deliberately warn him, but I'm saying maybe Aquaman manages to stop the first attack from Black Manta. Possibly there could be a huge loss with that. Maybe even these scenes that we've covered that Atlantis manages to slightly hold off, which then leads to Atlanna here saying that he must be stopped, or a global meltdown is imminent. Now, more in a second with regards to that global meltdown, because at this point in the trailer, this is where we get to the part of the movie that's being described as a bromance action adventure movie, in where we see Arthur in his new stealth suit going to free his brother after he was arrested at the end of the first movie. Now, I do really like the look of this stealth suit. We've seen this quite a while back now, but I have to admit, I would prefer to see the actual Aquaman king suit, if you will, more in the movie than this stealth suit. So I'm hoping that the stealth suit doesn't make up 3/4 of the movie, but I wouldn't be surprised given the shots that we see in this trailer. He seems to be in it quite a bit. He also seems to be in just some casual wear, but then he'll probably get back into the king suit for when he faces Black Manta. Now, it looks as though Orm has been sent to the kingdom of deserters, which we did see in the first Aquaman movie, which was one of the 7 kingdoms of Atlantis that separated after the Great Fall, just like the Lost Kingdom. Now, all of this between Orm and Arthur has been described as the feuding siblings form an uneasy partnership to take on another of the first film's big bads, Black Manta. So on top of the stakes of this movie, on top of Black Manta commanding this ancient evil, this trailer really shows the fun, spirited, adventurous time that we're going to go on with Aquaman and Orm, of which, I'm not going to lie, I'm not against movies like that at all. It's just sometimes on paper when you read that, you think, is it going to come across too comedic? Will the humor land? But I have to say, this looks really fun, with Orm being really reluctant to work with his brother. But as you can tell, that this should lead to those very comedic moments throughout the movie, in where they, maybe tropically end up a bit closer together. But I think the chemistry between Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa really, really shines here. I love a lot of these locations and the visuals that come with each unique location in the trailer with Orm and Arthur working together. As James Wann described it, it's like this globe-trotting adventure between them both where they visit so many different worlds. There's just a lot of imagination brought to life here, and it just looks really awesome. Mainly for me, seeing Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa in some of these scenes, the movie is really reading to me like a fun, adventurous time mixed in with the severity of Black Manta's thread, but also satiating the desire for those wanting also that kind of good action flick. Now, as the trailer continues, we get a lot more information about this mythic Black Trident. So we hear Orm say that we need to find Manta, and he explains a bit of this backstory to when the Trident was at the height of its power. So this would be before the great fall of Atlantis, before it sunk into the sea, as you can see the bridge here over the water, over the land. So Orm describes during King Atlan's time, there were 7 kingdoms, and the Trident was a curse upon them all. So here we see King Atlan disarm the Black Trident, and it appears to even break into 2 as we see the Lost Kingdom's Octobot there in the background. So this battle here could have actually taken place in the Lost Kingdom, also known as the Missing Kingdom or Lost Nation. And perhaps after King Atlan was victorious, the Trident was stored there securely, but when Atlantis sank, well, as per the name, it somewhat splintered off, and the Lost Kingdom became the Lost Kingdom. That is until Black Manta likely finds it during the events of the movie early on and equips this power for himself. And we even see this shot towards the end of the trailer with the figure that King Atlan fights holding the Black Trident. So I wonder if this could be when Black Manta takes it for himself from this husk, or it could be a part of the King Atlan flashback scene. It's quite hard to tell. So with Atlanna saying that if they don't stop Black Manta, there could be a global meltdown, and that the Black Trident's dark magic is spreading, it looks like the Black Trident in general, maybe to Black Manta's ignorance, or maybe he just doesn't care, or maybe he doesn't know, but it could have a catastrophic effect on the entire planet. And you can also see what it does to some creatures here as they glow green with the Trident's dark magic. Now, perhaps Black Manta can also create an army like this, as per in that scene with the lighthouse on fire that we went over earlier. You can see some creatures there. I do think that commanding this dark magic, this ancient evil, will give him these abilities. And I also wonder if a fate similar to this could actually be what happens to Black Manta. Maybe the whole using the dark magic consumes the user and he could end up looking pretty twisted himself. That would feel quite tropey though, but I can see maybe in the battle against Aquaman, as we see towards the end of this trailer, with both of them using both their tridents to, hack it out with each other, that maybe he just keeps drawing on more of the dark magic, more of the ancient evil, more of the ancient power, and the more you do that, the more you kind of overload, and then he could somewhat burn himself out. Now, when the events are all getting up to that part of the movie where we now hear Orm say that he means to end the bloodline, I do think this will end up in another big scale battle as per the first Aquaman movie. As Orm also says here, if you lead, the 7 kingdoms will follow. So maybe it's got to that point as per like the beginning of this trailer, the foreshadowing for him saying, oh yeah, not everyone really likes me as this new king. Well, when we get to a point of where quite literally everyone needs to rally together, so when Aquaman uses the staff here to kind of echo out and signal the people to follow and to rally, everyone through uniting and fighting together could give them a sense of faith in their new king. We also get a peek at Queen Mera smashing in the front of this Octobot here. Maybe even Black Manta is in it himself. Now, James Wann also confirms that Arthur's steed here, as seen in a trailer, is indeed Storm, who first appeared in the Aquaman comic back in the mid-60s, while his 8-legged friend is Topo, the same octopus that was briefly seen playing the drums back in the first film. The director explains that Topo will have a stronger presence in this film. He's an actual character in this one. So yeah, I am looking forward to some exchanges between Arthur and Topo there. So overall, guys, before we get onto the bonus details about what Wan's had to say about the whole long development of this, James Gunn, the ambiguous Batman comment, his response to what Amber Heard's been saying, this trailer, my impressions of this, I I actually think it looks way better than what I thought it was going to. Now, I say it like that, mainly because we've heard about test screenings scoring pretty low. You know, even just like the consistent reshoots that James Wann also goes on to talk about in some of these bonus details. Also, just the idea of the DCEU ending. Will Aquaman 2 really do as well as the first movie? But it looks like a fun time. I think the visuals, like James Wann has really strived hard to make them look good. Don't get me wrong, like you do see a couple of moments in the trailer where it's like Atlanna looks kind of like PS2 gamey in the face, and I'm sure a lot of you know what shot I'm on about. But overall, I think I cut some slack there a little bit because a lot of, well, mostly everything looks very ambitious. And just like the first film, while it was also praised for its VFX, it also had some wobbly moments. I'm just here for the kind of imagination and the creativity brought to life, the many world-trotting locations that we're going to go to, the surprisingly pleasant to me of how well the buddy bromance between Orm and Arthur is working here just through these trailer teasers. The action looks really fun. Black Manta is who I'm probably most hyped about, and the kind of black trident thing looks pretty cool. So let me know what you think of the trailer. Let me know if you have any theories on top of what I've said. But let's now get into what James Wann has talked about. First of all, when being asked with regards to a lot changing in the world of DC since he started shooting Aquaman 2, because that's very true. A lot has changed in the world of DC since then. So he says, obviously, I have to be mindful. If I'm living in a house and the house is getting renovated around me, it's hard for me to not take notice because the roof, the ceiling's missing, right? But the beauty of this movie, this Aquaman world, is that very early on, we always said that we are our own separate universe. My goal was always, if we could spin off a Seven Kingdoms universe, that would be my ideal dream. So what we do ultimately doesn't get affected by all that stuff, all that noise. Now, without me giving a massive explanation for each one of these, because I do think some of these answers could be interpreted a few ways, it's not quite literally and factually in its own universe. Aquaman, Arthur Curry Jason Momoa was a part of the DCEU. I think that's just the attitude he's taken to his movies, his world, all while, you know, it's connected to a larger universe. It's just like, for example, what James Mangold is saying about the future DCU Swamp Thing movie. He says, all while DC believe it to be connected to this larger franchise, and it is, it's a DCU character that's coming our way, he's just got to treat it as his own kind of little standalone project world. He's not really thinking, oh, it needs to connect to this, that, even though James Gunn is saying it will still connect. So James Wann, I think he's looking at it that way. So he's not really thinking and stressing so much, oh my God, the DCU is now coming, and we're no longer the DCEU, the house, the roof isn't here anymore. What is going on? He's just like, we're just cooking along. Now, up next, we also have James Wann emphasize that his plans for Aquaman 2 have remained the same since the beginning, despite what we may have all read in the press. And without reading the whole paragraph out here, he basically puts it down to big actors being in the movie and everyone's schedules being really hard, and as a result, they had to break up their shooting schedule into sections. And if actually, according to James Wann, if all combined together, it's not actually that many number of days at all of shooting. So I think that could be interpreted a couple of ways as well. I think there's 100% truth to that, but I do think some of the regime changes would have maybe have impacted this movie if you're reshooting like 2 years later. This isn't me calling James Wann a liar here. Like, he makes very good points as well, like with how reshoots are a good thing. I'm not saying they're a bad thing. After all, you do them, especially if test screenings are performing in a certain way. You might want to change something at some part in the movie, or you come up with an idea, as James Wann also describes here, like a light bulb went off in his head and it's like, oh, I'm going to do this now. Case in point being, for example, the nun in The Conjuring wasn't even a part of it, and then he included that character in those movies, or whatever movie it was, I can't remember right now. But my point is, yeah, that's true, but then there is also other things, like the Batman scenes. And speaking of the whole bloody Bruce Wayne thing, so Entertainment Weekly asked if there's any truth to filming both Affleck and Keaton. Wann replies, the tricky thing early on was not knowing whether Aquaman would come out first or come out after The Flash, so we just had to be prepared. At the end of the day, the best thing I would say about this movie is that it is not connected in any way to any of those films. That's the bottom line. Entertainment Weekly go on to say, so Batman does not appear in Aquaman 2? That's a no comment right now. You're going to have to wait for the movie to come out. We know for a fact that 2 Bruce Wayne scenes were shot. And if you want to go without confusing the audience so much, even though I honestly ultimately conclude at this point, does it really matter? Like, I don't know. So the way I'm looking at it is, he could just be saying that because maybe he just doesn't really want to diminish interest for those who really also want to see this film for a Bruce Wayne scene, because I don't think that's entirely true. I don't think people are just going to go see Aquaman 2 for a potential 10-second Batfleck scene. But, answering ambiguously, it's like, you're going to have to wait to see the movie, no comment on that for now. It could really mean that he just doesn't want to give that away because low-key, would you really keep Ben Affleck in? Would you really keep Michael Keaton in if the Flash movie is now out the way and both of those Bruces aren't carrying on? If anything, George Clooney was the ending Bruce to the Flash movie. But as we know, yes, to those of you who out there who still think this is a thing, confirmed multiple times by James Gunn that the DCU Batman is a new actor, and obviously George Clooney is not the DCU Bruce Wayne. So, bottom line, in conclusion, I think if James Wan is teasing that there is still a Bruce Wayne scene in this movie, it could still be Ben Affleck, in that this movie could be set technically before the events of The Flash. It's just that it's still coming out after The Flash, so they still decided to keep Ben Affleck's Bruce scene in there. Or they're just doing it anyway, because at this point, who cares? It's the last DCEU film. Ramble over about that. Now, as for James Gunn's involvement on Aquaman 2, one doesn't dispute the Hollywood Reporter's reporting that Gunn had weighed in on the Aquaman sequel, but the filmmaker also asserts that the end product is very much his vision. I've known James since way back, right? He says, we're horror guys, and so I'm definitely open to ideas, but at the end of the day, this is my movie. So I believe what he's saying there is ultimately this is still mainly like 99.9% his vision. It is still his movie. That is, he's very clearly saying that, but he doesn't disregard, as per what the Hollywood Reporter said, that Gunn had weighed in on the movie. So you quite literally do have to take that as whatever Gunn said to him. Maybe there was some kind of change. Maybe this could be attributed to what we just spoke about with the Bruce Wayne stuff and how it's like, oh yeah, obviously don't have this Bruce because that doesn't make sense. We're going to have to wait and see. Maybe there were some other things. Maybe towards the end, if he plans to keep Jason Momoa's Arthur on in the DCU, where he's like, okay, leave it like this. But ultimately, whatever it is or whatever it was that he weighed in on with Aquaman 2, James Wan is saying that it doesn't really affect his movie that much because at the end of the day, this is my movie. Now, as for the whole Amber Heard claims, for those of you who paid attention to the Depp versus Heard trial, Entertainment Weekly say here that the actress claimed in May 2022 that her part in the superhero sequel had been pared down as a result of the publicity surrounding her breakup with Johnny Depp. Now, interestingly, Wan insists, just like Walter Hamada at the trial when he testified, that he always intended the focus of the second movie to be the relationship between Arthur and Orm and not between Arthur and his paramour Mera, as was the case in the 2018 film. The director recalls, I always pitched this to everyone from the get-go. The first Aquaman was about Arthur and Mera's journey. The second movie was always going to be Arthur and Orm. So the first was a romance action-adventure movie. The second one is a bromance action-adventure movie. We will leave it at that. Now, lastly, everyone, with regards to a third movie, could we see one? Could we see one in the DCU? What could it be like? He gives two answers here of what a third movie could be like, but also if he wants to be involved in it or not. So he says here, what I like between this one and the first one is you really do see the growth of Arthur. He starts off as this kind of wanderer, and in the second one, he finally has more of a direction of what he wants to do with his life. If and when there is a third one, that's what it should be. It should be growing these characters, because I think we've set up certain things in a good place in the second movie that you can definitely draw upon in a third. I don't have any stories, but growing the characters is the biggest thing that I think the next Aquaman movie should be about. And they go and say, and would Wan be interested in directing a third Aquaman film? He replies, oh, buddy, I don't know. This film has taken up so much of my life, so much of my time. All I can think about now is taking a long break, somewhere not too close to the ocean, perhaps. Now, that doesn't mean he wouldn't be interested, but from what I am gathering from a lot of James Wan's responses is that this has taken up so much of his life. It's been sucking so much time, as per what a lot of directors experience. So a lot of directors feel like this at the time, but then, after that break, they're like, I'm reinvigorated. Maybe I could take on a third one. But would a third one even happen? We don't know. That's being, I think, deliberately left very ambiguous because, as a lot of us have said before, they're not exactly going to make you any more disinterested in Aquaman 2 than you have to be, given that we have a new DC universe on the way. So they're not going to be like, oh, this actor's carrying on or this actor isn't carrying on when there's still a movie coming out. So guys, I think I'm going to end this video there. Quite a long ramble, but I wanted to give you some extra details alongside the breakdown. So let me know what you thought of not only the trailer, but some of these extra details. Let me know what you thought about the Batman comments. Let me know what you think about the sequel comments, the Amber Heard comments, and just everything. I'd really appreciate it if you took the time, just like 2 or 3 seconds, to hit the like button on this video, maybe even go as far as sharing it for me to just help me get out there in the algorithm a little bit more. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCEU in the next video. Goodbye.